Hi everyone. This is the newest installment of When God Speaks. I am out here in my greenhouse today because I was doing some work out here. The outside is one of my favorite places to be, but this is the early season of gardening. So I've been out here getting some of my stuff ready and getting up everything kind of going for the upcoming growing season. And actually, I'm supposed to be doing a companion planting video, which I'm hoping to be able to get pushed in there. But this is something that I wanted to go ahead and talk about. Actually, I'm going to be real honest. I had an entirely different idea of what I was going to be talking about today on When God Speaks. However, as I was reading my Bible, God said, no, talk about this. So, okay, you got it. And I'm going to go ahead and explain that real quick. This is not something I talk about just tons. I mean, I've talked about it. It's not a big secret or anything, but it's something I do try to keep a little bit personal because I think it weirds people out a little bit. I deal with PTSD. I deal with the anxiety and depression, kind of the ups and downs of PTSD. Everything that kind of comes with that. I've done 2 tours overseas with the Army, and each tour did, it's kind of a different thing. I did different jobs, same job, but different missions in each different tour. And in each different tour, I would say they took a toll on me in different ways. This last tour of duty was the hardest on me. And certainly not, I would not like some of my brothers who had to endure just unspeakable they had to endure a lot. But I think each person kind of takes on what they have to have around them. And I came back from this last tour of duty in Afghanistan with some things in my memory that kind of still haunt me, kind of still cause me a few problems these days. I have issues with nightmares and with just anxiety in general. I don't like to be in public places a whole lot here lately, which is really crazy considering that I used to make a living at being a public speaker. So I'm a public speaker who doesn't like to be in public. So that's kind of an issue. I'm trying to work through it right now. But there's a few things from this last tour of duty that really, I would say, kind of seared into my brain. And I'm going to explain that just real briefly. I didn't think I was going to do this, but I feel led to. Towards the end of my tour of duty in Afghanistan this last time, I as a military police officer, I did a bunch of different jobs. I was a combat MP, and one of my jobs towards the end of my tour of duty was guarding at an FDS. It's a field detention site. So our infantry guys, would go out and bring in Taliban, people of interest. And we would guard them, keep them in our detention site until they were interrogated, until they were, I guess they decided what to do with them. Put them in the big jail or whatever. And one of the guys that I watched, he had just come in, but he complained, whined about a tummy ache. And because of the fact that we're American military, we don't let people suffer. We bend over backwards, and it doesn't even matter who you are. We bend over backwards to take care of you. And this particular bad guy complained of a tummy ache. So in my job, in my official capacity, I had to take him from our field detention site up to the hospital that was there on the base. And while I was there, we got him transferred in. And while I was there, one of our translators, who I'd worked with on many occasions, I spoke with him. And while I was sitting there waiting, and as I was waiting, the there were some children. There was a it's kind of like an ER, a trauma center or whatever. There were some children, Afghan children, who were being worked on, and I could see the doors were open. I could see them working on these children. There was a girl, and she had two younger brothers that were being worked on. And it was bad. It was really, really bad. And I should go ahead and stop and tell you that on my last tour of duty, I left 4 children at home. I had 3 boys and 1 girl that were at home missing mama. And I was at war missing them. And these children they had been attacked, and they were missing limbs. It was horrible. But I could just from my vantage point, I could see what was going on in that trauma center. And our interrogator came and sat down beside me. He could probably see, he was a sweet man, he could probably see, I said interrogator, interpreter. He could probably see that I was maybe a little distressed. And he just sat down to visit with me. And he was telling me what he had done that day. And as the conversation went on, I found out that the bad guy that I was guarding, that I had taken to the hospital for a tummy ache, he had committed an atrocity, a rocket attack on a schoolyard. And these children that were being taken care of by our service members were part of the casualties. And I about lost it. That was actually probably the beginning of the end of my tour of duty, because I just couldn't hardly bear what I had seen with those children, and knowing that the guy that I was guarding had done that. And I probably correlated my children at home to those children, which was really hard, knowing that I couldn't be there to hold my children. But that was a hard day for me. And I've carried that particular day with me for 8 years, I guess, now. And I'm sorry. That's difficult. As a mom, my first tour of duty, I wasn't a mom. My first tour of duty was Desert Storm. And I did a lot of crazy things there. Really, it kind of, for a little while, was pretty wild. But I wasn't a mom. And on this last tour of duty, I was. And I think that's probably what made it a little bit more difficult. And that's probably what makes it stick in my mind so much. Not that I think that anything we did there was wrong. I don't. I fully support the American military. I fully support our mission when we are overseas. But that doesn't mean that when things happen and we come back from there, we're okay. A lot of us come back with, maybe it's a particular memory that is kind of ingrained. It's burnt into our memories. Sometimes it's a lot of them. But we have to find a way past it. Soldiers, when we come back from war, I'm sure you've heard the 22 a day thing. There's a lot of suicide that happens because of not knowing how to deal with the trauma from what we've seen, what we've done. And I've dealt with that for a while. And I was trying to tell you, I was going to talk about something completely different today. I had my own idea of what I would speak about today, but God changed my mind. And I was reading the Bible today, and a particular verse stood out to me. 2 verses stood out to me, and I wanted to share those. Philippians chapter 4, 6 and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And, I know this to be true. I know this to be fact. But, sometimes it's hard when you're wrapped up in the anxiety, and then sometimes, after the anxiety comes the depression. But when you're wrapped up in all of that, sometimes it's hard to remember what can truly help. We search. When we're wrapped up in those things, we search for what can help us, what can make it stop. And I think sometimes we've lost precious brothers and sisters in arms who couldn't find that one thing that can truly help. And then they take the only way out that they know of. But I can tell you that when I think about it, and I remember, sometimes my husband has to remind me, but when I remember that all I have to do is turn it over to God. And I do. I make that prayer. I just say, God, help me. It can be as simple as that. Just, God, help me. He knows my heart. I don't have to tell him why. He knows. I just have to reach out. And a peace comes over me. You don't have to go to war to have trauma. You don't have to go to war to have anxiety and depression or PTSD. It happens with a lot of different situations for a lot of different people. And I'm sure that that's why God wanted me to talk about this today. I hope that it's something that can help other people. Because I can tell you that I struggled with this on a daily basis. I have trouble sleeping and all of that. But when I remember, oh my gosh, all I have to do is stop for a second and pray. Just ask for God's help. He gives me that help. A peace comes over me. And, it doesn't, I won't say that, everything is perfect from then on out. It's just not how it works. But I know that in those moments that I need help, I can rely on Him. And it says it right there in the Bible. And it's something that I truly believe. I feel with all of my heart. And I hope that if anyone else out there has situations, has trouble with PTSD, whether it be from war or from any other trauma in your life, I hope that you have the ability to seek God's help. Anyone can. Just so you know, you don't have to be a certain kind of person. God's there for all of us. I'm sorry that this was a little bit more of an emotional session today, but sometimes that's what's needed. That's where God led me today. So I hope that I see you again next time on When God Speaks. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week.